Now, while you probably may have never heard of Tatra, the brand that you may have known that's built right here in the Czech Republic, and actually Mladá Boleslava, where we're at, is this, the Skoda. Of course, this is the Skoda Felicia, and I have a story to tell you about this. When I was here after the Velvet Revolution, I almost bought this car. It was cheap, $2,000. I drove up in it, my wife saw me, and she almost fell over laughing because I looked like I was driving a bathtub. Now these cars, they're worth about 20,000 euros. Should have bought it back in the 90s. But since we're here at the Skoda Museum, let's take a look at the other brand that the Czech Republic builds, and that is coming up next. So just a little brief history of Skoda. It actually started the way many car companies started, and that is with this, actually with that, a bicycle. Two men right here in Mladá Boleslava, Lauren and Clement, got together and decided that they were going to manufacture bicycles. So first bike, went to Paris, saw this bike, well, a version of this, with the engine on the front, and decided they could do it better, stuck the engine in the middle. And that is really the beginning of the Skoda brand. It wasn't a car manufacturer, it was a bike manufacturer. It wasn't long before Lauren and Clement decided that the money was right here in cars, and in 1906 this was the very first car they built, the Type A, and eventually they went on to build the Type AB, the Type AC. It just kept going and going until, well, let me show you that in a sec. Eventually, Lauren and Clement ran out of money and they wanted to expand, so they partnered with this little bird. It's really not a bird, it's an arrow with feathers, and it's the company called Skoda. Skoda at the time was building big things like trains and trucks and decided to get in the car business, and so that's how Lauren and Clement became Skoda, and this little bird was born. The rest, as you know, is history. Okay, the rest may be history, but you may not know that history. After the Second World War, Skoda kept building cars like this Octavia, and of course, the car that perhaps tugs at my heartstrings the most, this Skoda MB, or the Mbačko, and that's because this is the car that my dad used when he escaped the Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia at the time, under the communists. This was also the car that took the front engine Skoda and made it a rear engine car. Okay guys, I'm here with Mr. Velebny, engineer Velebny actually, and he is the head of the restoration workshop here at the Skoda Museum, and we are sitting in the very first Skoda car. Actually, it wasn't a Skoda, right? It was a Lauren and Clement.
Yes.
So this was the very first car that the company built. Let's skip ahead now. How did it become Skoda?
So my family always worked in Skoda. Mm-hmm. My grandfather started in Skoda in old Lauren Clement times in 1925.
Wow.
Later, after Second World War, he became a chief designer of bodywork.
Yes.
So,
wow.
So all.
What did he design? Which one?
All after-war cars from Tudor till Skoda 1000 MB are made under his leading. So later, when he was pensionist, he started. He went abroad to New Zealand and designed their Skoda Treka car. It was a farmer car for utility car for farmers on the chassis of Skoda Octavia. Later he made Skoda Skopak. It was made the similar car made in Pakistan, and he finished his job in 80 years when he was 80 years old. He made sketches of bodyworks for people restoring old lowering Clements.
Wow, so you have a long history with
Yeah.
Skoda.
So it was my grandfather and my father and uncle worked in development center in Skoda, and they tuned racing engines for Skoda Formula 3, Skoda 120S and Skoda 130 RS cars.
This is a Skoda two-door. Now you may be wondering, what does two-door stand for? Well, it's actually very simple. It's English. The car has two doors. It's also a car that my grandfather owned and my dad at one point took apart. I've got this picture of him with the car completely apart. So while Tatra may be the brand that was more synonymous with the communist because it was the head communist that drove him, Skoda was the brand that was more attainable, that people like my father and my grandfather could actually own and drive. And that is probably why Skoda today is certainly alive and much more of a popular brand. In fact, Skoda builds almost 1 million units a year and sells them around the world. Do they travel around the world with the cars too when they race them?
Today, do you mean?
No. Back in
that time, yeah. They traveled around former socialist countries, bloc, but also outside in Western Europe. They took part in at the beginning of 70s in European Championship for touring cars. And they went to Jarama in Spain and to Nürburgring in Germany and any other circuits.
Wow, so Skoda's in your blood.
Yes, from my beginning, when I was a small child, I knew personally all that racing drivers from that time, old Mr. Bobek and Mr. Fousek and all that names that raced successfully Skoda cars from 50s to 80s.
All right, now check out this red little cute car. For the longest time, Skoda built front engine cars, and then under the communists, they decided that they were going to try something different, building the rear engine car. And this was a prototype of a car that my dad owned. In fact, my dad escaped out of the Czech Republic back in 1968 in the real version of this. This is the Skoda MBAčko, or MB, which by the way stands for Mladá Boleslava, where we're at. Now, if you're more into modern Skodas, here's the concept for the Skoda Yeti, which is probably one of my favorite Skodas. It is completely original and somewhat off-road worthy. And of course, here we have the concept for the Roomster. Now, both of these concepts aren't running prototypes, they're just for show, but the one that is running and is drivable is right here, and that's a prototype for the Skoda Superb, which is a car that Skoda has built from the beginning, or at least virtually from the beginning of its existence. It's burning, you only have a minute, you gotta take one. Which one do you pull out of here?
I like old cars, and I like this exactly this Laurent Clement Skoda 110.
The one in front of us.
Yes, because it still look old, but already has brakes at all four wheels. Has engine has enough power, so it goes 90 kilometers per hour. It's easy to drive, and but it is still good-looking old car. So I like it, and it's my favorite.
How many horsepower?
30 horsepower.
30 horsepower.
Yeah.
That's all right back in the day.
Yeah.
All right, so I am in the secret Skoda lair. Actually, it's not. It's called the depository, where they keep all their prototypes from the company's long history. To my left, well, that's probably Skoda's only movie car, the Ferrat. Maybe you'd say Ferret. This was a vampire car that was produced for a prototype, but eventually turned into a movie car that sucked blood through your feet. I don't know. But the most interesting cars, in my opinion here, are probably these two. These are Skoda 120s, which actually was a rear-wheel drive car, but they have the engines in the front, unlike the production cars, which had the engines in the back. And of course, perhaps if you're a huge Skoda fan, this is something that could have been but wasn't. These two cars are prototype cars that the communist government spent 100 million crowns developing when they were coming up with those cars. These should have been the Skoda 125s. Instead, they were thought to be too Western, too Italian. They were designed in Italy, so Skoda built those cars. This could have been, that was. I'll let you decide. Your job here is restoring old Skodas.
Yes.
Do you do them for the company, or do you do them for individuals? And how do you find these cars? Do they come to you? Do people come to you and say, hey, we want to restore this car?
So our department has three main things to do.
Yeah.
One of them is restoring old cars. Second is run those cars or support running of those cars on rallies and actions for historical cars. And we are also supporting, let's say, marketing activities of Skoda Mark, because because it's another possibility to let know people about Skoda.
About Skoda. Now, I was talking to the tour guide, and she said that last year Skoda sold almost 1 million cars worldwide. Not quite, almost. You sold like 250,000 in China.
Yeah.
And so that's becoming a significant number. This is becoming a very big company.
Yes.
A long way from when this was built, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. This was hand built.
This is hand built. These cars were built piece to piece. First, let's say serial production was that Type 110, which we mentioned before. Which was built in a quantity of 3,000. Everything before was step by step, piece by piece, made individually.
So,
but it doesn't mean that we were not successful and known around the world. For example, Laurin Clement, a huge quantity of their production sold abroad, and we successfully exported cars also to Japan at that time.
So, what's the place of Skoda in car history? Mercedes, obviously. Daimler built the first car. Ford, the first mass-produced car. Where does Skoda fit into that history, as you see it?
If we have it together as cars produced in Mladá Boleslav, it means Laurin Clement with Skoda.
Yeah.
We are one of the oldest companies in the world producing the cars, because at the same location. Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Even here, right? We're actually sitting in the old factory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So Laurin Clement started in another end of Mladá Boleslav with a small workshop,
Yeah.
but 5 years later already started in this area to build their motorcycles and so on. So we are really in the historical center of Mladá Boleslav.
This is a Skoda Fabia Super 2000, and it's a race car. If you fancy yourself a WRC racer like Sebastian Loeb, this car is very attainable. 7 million crowns, or about $350,000 if you want to start your own race team. Of course, Skoda has a long racing history with this 1984 Skoda Type 745. At some point, Skoda won enough races that it was considered the Porsche of the East. See you next time. Ciao.